Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Nexus 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto got a training harem with Mabui, Tsunade, Yugao Hinata, Sakura, Tenten, Kurenai, Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please give me hype instead of comment and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. We were both just getting sick of the old pervert trying to set us up, so we decided to teach him a lesson. Naruto Uzumaki placed his hands behind his head with a grin. Shikamaru Nara smirked back, nodding slightly. What did you do? Sakura Haruno asked, seemingly aghast. But in her mind, another Sakura shouted, yeah. Serves the old goat right. The so-called Rookie 9 had been brought back to the academy to give a presentation of ninjutsu and taijutsu to the students. The trio in question had gone first, and afterwards had gotten to talking in the back of the room. Even after the class had filed out, the three teen ninja had hung around, catching up. We agreed to go on a date. Naruto answered Sakura's question, but we planned it ahead so almost everything would go wrong. Like during dinner I kept talking about all the great girls of the Konoha, glamorous Ino, fiery Sakura, cute Hinata. Then I spilled something on her dress. But I told you she wanted to be an actress, right? Well, every time I messed up she managed to look a little more into me. Hinata Hyuga was wandering the halls, remembering her own time in school. When she heard familiar voices she started to join them, but then her natural shyness stopped her, and she stood outside the door, listening. So we were standing in front of these stone pillars. She is looking at me with these huge eyes. And her stare, and her body language, they are screaming, I love you. Except me. It was so ludicrous, it was all I could do to keep from laughing. I mean, after all that, Naruto shook his head with a huge grin. Shikamaru nodded, and Sakura stifled a chuckle. And she was obviously not my type. She was so sheltered, and she probably couldn't even throw a kunai halfway straight. I was basically trapped there, trying to think of what to say next. Smack. Before any of the trio had noticed, Hinata had crossed the room, and slapped Naruto full in the face. Hinata. Naruto croaked in surprise. I won't take that. Not even from you. Even if you figured out that I love you. Even if you saw me almost at that waterfall. Tears were running down the kunoichi's cheeks, and her body shook slightly. I thought you were better than that. Hinata turned and started to run away, but Naruto was faster. He wrapped his arms around her, and held her gently even as she struggled to get away. You thought I was talking about before the finals of the Chunin exams, in front of the training stones, he said softly, remembering, back when you gave me the boost I needed to fight Neji. But I wasn't. I was telling them about a joke this girl and I played on Jiraiya just before I came back. He released her, and she didn't move, so he continued, I know all too well what it is like, so I would never make fun of someone else. Especially not you, who was always kind to me. He gently turned her, so he could look into her eyes, especially not for being in love with someone who doesn't notice or acknowledge you. I know how that feels, too. I used to have a huge crush on Sakura. Though I was in love with her. But she only had eyes for Sasuke. She thought I was annoying. That's why I understand how you feel. I know. Naruto trailed off, and looked down. Then he looked back at Hinata, with a touch of worry. He reached up and scratched his right cheek. Hinata, my life is pretty much a mess right now. But when things settle down, if you're still interested, maybe we could go out sometime. The daughter of the Hyuga clan turned bright red, and her white eyes grew wide as saucers. We could go get lunch. Hinata held her breath. And talk. Get to know each other better. It appeared as if most of her blood had rushed to Hinata's head. She rocked back and forth slightly, as if to faint. Then she took control with a shudder and glanced up at Naruto again. I would like that, she answered. Then she executed a quick bow, and ran from the room. She did not go far, however. She stopped just outside the door, feeling like her heart was going to leap out of her chest. Hey, Shikamaru grunted, I don't know if I should wish you luck or offer my condolences. That was very nice of you, Naruto, Sakura said. The golden-haired ninja turned to face her, and a look of sadness settled onto his face. It might seem that way, Sakura, but it really wasn't. Between Sasuke, and Orochimaru, and the Akatsuki, I probably won't live long enough for my life to get less hectic. No, the nice thing to do would have been to let Hinata down easy. To tell her I was flattered, but there was no chance. And I knew that even as I asked her out. Then why? His teammate asked. Listening outside, Hinata brought her hands to her mouth in a familiar gesture of fear and worry. I wish I could say I was thinking strategically like Shikamaru, Naruto answered, that I was expecting to need Hinata's help at some future point, and I was banking on her feelings to make sure she would be willing. But we all know that's not me. I'm not that smart or that cold. Hey, sorry Shikamaru, you know what I mean. He waved his hand at the lazy genius in supplication before continuing. No, the reason was that, looking at Hinata at that moment, so angry, so heartbroken, but still standing up to me, something changed. I've always known Hinata was kind and smart, if a little too shy. But I realized she's stronger and braver than most people give her credit for, even me, and especially herself. And she's a great ninja. Then he grinned, just a little, remembering, and she may have been ultra cute 3 years ago, but she's become a real beauty. Hinata felt wetness on her cheeks again, but this time she was crying for a different reason. And at that point, I started crushing on Hinata a little. I thought, I could fall in love with this woman. We could be happy together. Then he chuckled ironically, so I wasn't being kind to Hinata, or thinking strategically. I was being purely selfish. I saw a chance for my future happiness, and I wasn't willing to let it go. He sighed, but I can't do that to Hinata. I have to go after her. I'll tell her I was leading her on. Maybe I'll tell her that, using her feelings strategically, stuff. If she hates me, it will be easier for her to find someone better for her. For the third time in less than an hour, Hinata Hyuga shocked even herself with her brazenness. She stepped back into the classroom, and shouted, I don't think she will believe you. The other three all turned to stare at her in amazement. As the normally withdrawn girl turned away, they were amazed to hear something they had never heard before. Clear as a bell, and full of joy, Hinata laughed as she ran away. Hinata, wait. Naruto ran after her. I knew you were still there. That girl is developing a bad habit of eavesdropping, Shikamaru noted. Catch you later, Sakura. Yeah, later Shikamaru, Sakura waved to him. As he exited, a more thoughtful look crossed her face. And for once, inner Sakura was not energetic. Instead, the mental projection almost looked sad. He was in love with me. Inner Sakura asked. The word was in a giant thought bubble over her head. Hinata had led Naruto on a merry chase back to the training stones. Whether she had had a plan or not, when they first arrived, all they could do was pant, catching their breath. Naruto, Hinata finally said, back to her normal demeanor, if you are in trouble, well, maybe we could train together. I might not be as good as Shino or Kiba, but I'll try not to hold you back. Hinata, that would be great, Naruto enthused, there's no way you'll hold me back. We can both get stronger. Then he settled down, shyly rubbed his finger under his nose, and get to know each other. She nodded, smiling again. As Naruto ran up to the training stones, Hinata surged to her feet. She had been sitting against one of the pillars, and could not suppress a yawn and a stretch. Hey, Hinata, the young ninja greeted her, sorry if I'm late. You weren't. The kunoichi's voice cracked slightly in awkwardness. Late that is. I just got here a little early. Naruto Uzumaki nodded, and then looked around at the monoliths set throughout the clearing. So, what do we do? He asked. What do you mean? Her counter was twinged with confusion. Well, To be honest, I never really trained with anyone else. Not as a partner. When we did the tree climbing training, Sasuke, Sakura, and I were competing, not working together. And the rest of the timing it's been either me working alone, or being taught by someone. He gave her an embarrassed grin, so I'm not too sure what we should do here. Do we spar? Have target practice? Go for a jog? Actually, Hinata tapped her fingers together and looked at the ground. I had an idea. If you don't mind. Sure. What is it? Well, can you show me the Rasengan first? She tapped her fingers again, afraid she was asking too much. Yeah, no problem. As he answered, Naruto extended his right hand. Blue streaks of chakra began to circle above his palm, quickly increasing and growing tighter until they formed a spiraling sphere, about 4 inches in diameter. Byakugan, Hinata whispered. The veins around her eyes swelled as additional blood and chakra flowed into the pale orbs. She looked down at the chakra globe spinning in Naruto's hand, and she gaped in amazement. It's so beautiful. You think so? Naruto asked, staring down at his hand through slitted eyes. You can't see it like I do, she told him. Then her voice grew very quiet and she asked, would you like to? Really? That would be awesome. How? Kurenai Jutsu. It is one of the Kekkei Genkai techniques of the Hyuga clan. It enables the user to share what they see with someone else. Her gaze dropped to the ground, clearly unhappy about what she was about to say. I am just learning the jutsu, so I still require direct contact. Neji is able to transmit his vision through a thread over 100 feet already. And my father can send to multiple people several miles away with no connection. Sensing her depression, Naruto got a little angry. Listen, Hinata, you have to stop comparing yourself to Neji. He might be better at some things, but you are better at others. You created the protection of the 8 trigrams 64 palms, not Neji. Naruto put his hand on her shoulder as a supportive gesture, and besides, Neji's like a machine. All he thinks about is getting stronger. You are a more balanced human being, and more fun to be around. Hinata's head jerked up in shock, but she smiled a bit. Thank you, Naruto. Don't mention it. Besides, there's nothing wrong with a little direct contact. Hinata turned red at that, but Naruto was looking at his Rasengan again and didn't notice. So, what do we need to do? Hold hands. Hinata flushed again, and this time Naruto saw. His face colored as he realized what he had suggested. No, I'm not that advanced. I'll need to touch your forehead, the third eye point. Okay. Naruto shifted his headband to a higher position to give her access to his forehead. The young woman flashed a quintet of quick hand signs, and then pressed the middle and ring fingers of her right hand to the center of his forehead, just above the brow ridge. The possessed ninja felt an odd sense of being outside his body as he found he was seeing himself rather than Hinata. Suddenly he was glaring straight up into the sky. Then he was looking at the stones to his left. He realized he could not access Hinata's entire 360-degree vision at once. Instead he had his normal field of view, and could change what part he was seeing by turning his head. He remembered why they were doing this, and focused on himself again. He could see the blue trails of his chakra network through his skin. He turned his attention downward, and realized that the chakra points around his stomach were red instead of blue. He wondered if he always looked like that to Hinata and Neji. Finally he shifted again, and saw the Rasengan in his hand. Instead of a sphere, under the Byakugan it appeared as a many-faceted gem. The colors of the chakra streams appeared both more varied, and more vibrant. The chakra appeared to be moving more slowly, but the jewel itself also rotated gently. You're right, Hinata, he said reverently, it is beautiful. You're amazing. Hinata suddenly stepped back, and broke the connection. Thank you, Naruto said with heartfelt honesty. He dismissed the Rasengan and asked, okay, so what's next? Well, my idea was for you to attack me with Rasengan. What? I don't mean to hit me, she explained quickly. I suspect the Rasengan might be able to break the 8 trigrams heavenly spin. I thought we could test it, and in the process give us both a chance to push the limits of our abilities. Alright, Naruto still sounded a little dubious, but I am going to try it at half power first. I don't want any chance of hurting you. She nodded, and then stepped back. Naruto also moved away, carefully judging the distance between them. He dropped his hand, and formed a less dense Rasengan. Ready. She nodded. He took a half step forward, and then darted towards her, his right hand extended. When he was 3 feet away, she moved. Heavenly spin, Hinata incanted, expelling chakra from her palms as her body rotated. The energy expanded into an opaque dome around her. When the Rasengan struck the barrier, there was a moment of where the two seemed to strain against one another. Then the chakra sphere shattered and the genin was thrown back almost 30 feet. Man, Hinata, that was too strong. I don't think the Rasengan did anything. He shook his head to clear the cobwebs. Oh no, she protested, it did. You made a dent in the heavenly spin. I haven't seen or heard of that happening before. Also, she frowned as she continued, that Rasengan was only about 30% of the strength of one you showed me before. Naruto blushed. It was his turn to be embarrassed. The pervy sage keeps telling me I need to work harder on my chakra control. Oh, let's try again. Having pointed out one of his flaws left her uncomfortable. You just need to make your jutsu a little stronger. Right, a little more. Naruto still looked worried. He formed a weak Rasengan again. Not satisfied, he let it dissipate, and formed the attack a second time. This time the glowing ball met his expectations, and he readied himself to rush the kunoichi. Here I come, Hinata, he warned her as he charged. She braced herself, and when he was in range, activated her technique again. This time, the conflict lasted a half-second longer, and instead of shattering, the Rasengan carved through the heavenly spin barrier. Naruto's hand followed the spinning sphere in, but the defensive wall closed around his wrist. The force pulsing from the heavenly spin shook the genin like a terrier shaking a rat. As soon as she realized what was happening, the Byakugan user released the jutsu, dropping Naruto like a stone. Naruto! Hinata ran over to him, her face racked with fear. Naruto! She reached out and gently touched his back. Naruto! Suddenly he rolled over, a huge grin on his scratched and dirty face. Hinata! Did you see that? I got through. Not very far, but I got through. She let out a sigh of relief and then smiled with him. Yes, I saw. Let's try it again. He jumped back to his feet. She nodded even as he jogged a short distance from her. Then he turned to face her again, with a look of renewed determination. Rasengan! He exclaimed, rushing forward. Heavenly spin! Hinata countered. This time there wasn't even a moment's conflict. The Rasengan cut right through the heavenly spin. But the barrier did not reform. Instead, the entire dome unraveled. Naruto's eyes widened as he realized he was aiming a deadly attack at Hinata's now unprotected heart. He tried to stop, but the Rasengan itself seemed to be pulling him forward. Time appeared to slow as the zipper of her coat flapped in the breeze thrown off by the fourth Hokage's weapon. As the chakra tracks in the sphere began to slice into her jacket, Hinata moved. Her fingers pulsing, she tapped 2 places on the top of his forearm, and 1 on the underside. The Rasengan instantly vanished, and Naruto tumbled backwards from the effort he had been putting into not striking Hinata. The genin jumped to his feet, and grabbed the Chunin gently by the shoulders. Hinata, are you okay? Naruto asked. She blushed slightly under his intense gaze, and nodded. Her face grew even redder when he hugged her tightly with a sigh of relief. I thought I was going to hit you. He released her, and looked down at his hand. You closed chakra points in my arm, didn't you? Yes. Oh, I can fix that. She reached for his arm. Wait. He stopped her. When Neji did this to me with the 8 trigrams 64 palms, I was able to overcome it. And Pervy Sage told me that Gentle Fist isn't the only technique that closes chakra points, it's just the simplest and most efficient. So I want to see if I can do it again. Naruto formed a fist, trying to force the chakra back into his hand. Come on. His nails cut into his palm, come on. Finally he let go, stretching out his fingers to work out the cramps. Man, I only got one of the three. Hinata, can you? Of course, she answered, elated to be asked. She tapped his forearm again, releasing the restrained energy. Thanks. Then, shall we try again? She asked. What? He exclaimed. No way. You were right, the Rasengan totally destroyed your 8 trigrams palm's heavenly spin. And I almost hurt you. If you have been an instant later. No, that is why we need to continue. I need to see if I can find a way to stop it. I want to improve the heavenly spin so it won't have this huge weakness. And you need better control. What if this was a real fight, and your enemy used substitution to switch for one of your teammates? Or an innocent bystander? But, no buts. She shouted at him, now attack me, or I'll shut off all your chakra points. Then she realized what she had done, and collapsed in on herself. Okay. Yes ma'am, he chuckled at her. His laughter calmed her, and she resumed her fighting stance. Rasengan. Heavenly spin. Rasengan. Heavenly spin. 20 minutes later, Hinata raised her hand in submission. The front of her jacket was ripped and torn, revealing brief expanses of pale, yet firm skin, or the armored mesh undergarments favored by the kunoichi of the Hidden Leaf Village. The young woman dropped to the ground. I'm sorry, Naruto, I don't have enough chakra. It's my fault, Hinata. He helped her to sit against one of the rocky columns, and then plopped down next to her. If I had better control, you wouldn't have had to waste chakra on the gentle fists and substitution jutsu. No, it's fine. Beside, you were getting a lot better at the end. I didn't have to do anything the last 4 times. You too, he encouraged her, you stopped 2 of my last 5 attacks. But next time, maybe we could try something a little safer. I'd like to work on overcoming those chakra blocks. Next time, don't you want to? Naruto sounded surprised, and a little hurt. Of course, I just, wasn't sure you would. Same for me. You helped me a lot today, Hinata. She blushed again. Well, if you are up to it, I did have another idea for you. I still have some chakra. Naruto feigned modesty, to spare her feelings. What is it? I was thinking about your chakra control, and the Rasengan. Is it harder to make the Rasengan smaller? Yeah, how did you know that? Well, she leaned back as she explained, a lot of things are like that. Like how it is harder to hit a small target than a big one. In this case, even though it takes less chakra, a smaller area requires greater focus and control. There's not as much space to work with, compared to what you are used to. So I should just try to make the Rasengan smaller. Right, but only if you can keep the power the same. A smaller ball might not hit as much of your target, but it needs to do the same amount of proportional damage. Then, once you can create a full power Rasengan on your fingertip, try creating another one on each of your other fingers. Doing that would take a great level of chakra control. A smaller Rasengan on each finger. Naruto looked amazed. Hinata, that's genius. It's not, really, she stammered. Now that she was done explaining, she reverted to form, but, well, it could help. No, it's really good. And it's something I can work on during my spare time. The impulsive ninja looked down at his hand, forming the rotating orb once again. This time, it was only the size of a baseball, and sweat formed on his brow. After a few seconds, he lost control, and the sphere pulsed outwards to its normal size, before tearing itself apart. Naruto started again, and Hinata simply watched, always impressed by his determination. Naruto, she finally spoke after his 3rd attempt. Yeah, could you teach me the Rasengan? Naruto looked flustered, and scratched the back of his head. I don't know, Hinata. Of course, She sounded sad, and upset with herself. It's your special technique. I shouldn't have asked. That's not it, Hinata. He shook his head. It's just, no matter how many character flaws he has, Jiraiya is a good teacher. And I'm not sure I'm smart enough to teach anyone else such an advanced jutsu. But if you are willing to put up with an inept sensei, I'll give it a try. Under one condition, she locked his eyes to hers with a determined gaze. If I'm not allowed to doubt myself, then you can't doubt yourself, either. Right. Okay. He grabbed her hand and shook on it. Next time, I'll bring the water balloons. Naruto swung his feet out of bed with a yawn. He stumbled across his small apartment, and pulled open the refrigerator. The teen ninja withdrew a carton of milk, opened it, and sniffed carefully. To his surprise, the contents still smelled fresh. Uzumaki to a swig, and took out 2 slices of bread. He dropped them into the toaster and then finished off the milk. After Naruto finished showering and getting dressed, he walked purposefully over to the wardrobe and threw the doors open. Inside were all the tools of a shinobi. Posts held stacks of shuriken and kunai, and Naruto noticed he was running low on the latter. Hanging in the back were a single tonfa, jien, and nunchaku, the weapons he had trained with but never bothered to master, along with his backpack. Crumpled in the bottom was a stealth uniform, and on top of it were strewn rope, claws, and other random essentials. The only thing scheduled for today is the debriefing on the bandit mission from last week, with Sakura, Sai, and Kakashi-sensei after lunch, he noted aloud, while considering what he might need. Naruto reached in and took the first of his treasures from its place of honor. He placed the Konoha headband against his brow, and knotted it into place. With the replacement on, he touched the broken pieces of the original Iruka had given him. He opened the barely hidden compartment he had added to the door, and removed the amulet of the first Hokage. Smiling fondly, he looped the jewel around his neck. Next, the ninja slipped 2 kunai into his leg pouch, and a third into the holster under his jacket between his shoulder blades. He also moved a dozen shuriken to the various concealed pockets sewn into his clothing. Finally, Naruto took out the small wooden box, which housed the greatest of his treasures. Though he did not intend to take it with him today, he looked at it every morning when he was in the village hidden in the leaves. As he opened it, the genin's face twisted in shock, and he dropped the empty box. Oh, man, what happened? Naruto said to himself, looking around the studio flat. Where is it? Shadow clone jutsu. Instantly there were 10 Narutos, who proceeded to tear the room apart. Not here. Maybe there. Crash. Transform. One of the clones turned into a rat and crawled under the bed. Not here. Come on. After every square inch of the room had been examined twice, all of the duplicated youths stopped moving. It's not here, one of them said. 3 others turned to glare at him, and he added, I'm just saying. I didn't take it on the mission, another spiky-haired teen remembered, but I have been carrying it around the village more lately. Maybe I dropped it or something. Right. Naruto scooped the wooden case from the floor as he moved to the door, and looked back at himself. I'm going to search the village. You guys clean up here. Hey, why do we get maid duty? Because you are the clones. Oh yeah, prove it. We don't have time for this. He showed the empty box to them for emphasis. It's missing. The copies all blanched, and the original rushed out the door. Where have I been? Naruto thought to himself as he jumped from the balcony. Ichiraku ramen, of course. Old man Tuki would have noticed if I dropped something. Naruto tore through the Konoha at high speed. In his wake he left a series of confused and slightly wind-whipped villagers. Was that Naruto? Tenten asked Neji as an orange and black blur passed them. Yes, the Hyuga Jonin kept walking. Aren't you curious? Not enough to risk getting involved. She chuckled even though he had not been joking. I guess you're right. Naruto arrived at the ramen shop, and burst through the curtains. Hey old ma, his words died in his throat when he saw a familiar figure. Good morning Sakura, he croaked out slowly, what are you doing here? Hey, Naruto, Nishi waved. Miss Sakura loves our new breakfast ramen. She's here almost as much as you are now. Breakfast ramen. Naruto was all but salivating at the thought. Then he shook his head, refusing to be distracted. The ninja looked at his teammate, struggling with what to say. Nishi, have I left anything here lately? Anything at all? I don't think so, the new chef answered, but I'll go ask Mr. Tuki. Sakura set down her chopsticks, but did not look up from the empty bowl. He's hiding something, the kunoichi told herself. He's looking for something and he doesn't want me to know what it is. Maybe a gift for me. Or a gift from Hinata. Then she grimaced to herself, more likely something perverted. Good morning, Naruto, the shop's owner smiled at his favorite customer as he came out from the back of the store. I'm sorry to say we haven't found anything recently. Okay, thanks. Naruto turned and walked out, a visage of concentration crinkling his eyes and nose. Sakura stood up and followed him. Are you looking for something? She asked him carefully. Oh, he looked back, not having noticed her trailing behind. Yeah. I can help you look, she offered innocently. What? You don't need to waste your time, Sakura. It's not that important. It's okay, I've got nothing to do. Then she considered for a second. Didn't you visit Kiba in the hospital yesterday? Yeah, Naruto perked up. I did. Let's go, Naruto. Sakura started walking towards the infirmary. But the energetic young man took off running again, and the young woman was forced to quicken her pace to keep up. After he reached the hospital, Naruto slowed to a respectful pace, mostly out of fear of being yelled at by the nurses. After a short walk, the pair reached Kiba's room. Poor Kiba, Sakura announced, getting chicken pox at our age. And needing to be hospitalized for it. The first thing noticeable in the room was the 7-foot-long dog alongside the bed. Akamaru raised his head and woofed happily at them. Kiba turned to look at them, his face covered with red marks. I sure am Mr. Popular today, he remarked weakly. As they moved past the dividing partition, his meaning became clear. Standing on the other side of his bed were both of the Hyuga sisters. Good morning Haruno-san, Uzumaki-san, Hanabi inclined her head respectfully. The genin had almost the same features as her sister, but looked totally different. The younger Hyuga was garbed in a short-sleeved shinobi shozoku, and wore her leaf insignia as a headband. Unlike Hinata's bashful kindness, Hanabi gave off an aura of assured superiority. Hello Naruto, Sakura, Hinata said. Oh no, Naruto thought to himself, now Hinata, too. Hi, Hinata, Hanabi, the fox-faced genin returned their greeting. Sorry to interrupt, Kiba, but I'm here on a mission. Naruto's statement filled the faces of the other three ninja with surprise and curiosity. Sakura just rolled her eyes at the exaggeration. Did I drop something here yesterday? No, I don't think so. Did he Akamaru? The large dog lifted his head again, and let out a slight growling bark. I didn't think so, the animalistic Chunin confirmed. Then he slowly and painfully lifted himself up onto one elbow, but if you are looking for something you lost, I have an idea. The three kunoichi reacted with concern for his discomfort. You know Akamaru's great at finding things, and he's been kinda bored the last few days. So maybe he could go with you. If you can give him scent to track, he can find it anywhere in the village. If he's willing, that'd be awesome. Naruto pumped his fist in excitement. What do you say, Akamaru? Woof. The ninja hound jumped to his feet. Great. Thanks for your help, Sakura. Naruto started to run out the door. I'm not done yet. You might still need me to think for you. Sakura poked a little fun at him, while inner Sakura shouted, you're not getting rid of me that easy. Darn, he thought, I hoped I could ditch her. You should go as well, sister, Hanabi stated, causing everyone to gawk at her. If Uzumaki-san needs Haruno-san's insight and Akamaru's nose, he may also need your eyes. Then the younger Hyuga lowered her voice so only Hinata could hear her, and you do not want Naruto alone with Sakura and indebted to her. Yes. Hinata stood up suddenly. I'll come too. Oh no. Naruto wilted. Now it's both of them. Alright, Akamaru, you should be able to get a scent off of this. Both women took note of the handsome wooden case he removed from his belt, but neither could see what, if anything, was left inside as he opened it for the dog to sniff. The white canine stuck his nose into the box, and then let out a quiet, "Arf." Okay, let's go. Naruto pointed at the door, and Akamaru bounded out of the room. The three teens quickly followed. You don't have to hang around, Hanabi, Kiba told the girl, counting the points in the ceiling. No, I do not mind, Kiba-san, she said, blushing not unlike her sister. Then, can you grab the radio from my jacket? It's linked to the one in Akamaru's collar. She complied, and they both listened. Where is he going? Sakura asked as they followed the furry tracker through the back alleys of the Hidden Leaf Village. He seems to be heading for the academy, Hinata noted. That's right, I talked to Konohamaru there yesterday, Naruto remembered, maybe that's where I lost it. As the quartet raced through the street, they passed a familiar pair, for the second time. This time he's got Hinata, Sakura, and Akamaru with him, Tenten observed. Neji sighed. Fine. You obviously will not be able to focus until your curiosity is assuaged. So we will shadow them for a while. She smiled knowingly as they jumped to a nearby rooftop and began to trail Naruto and company from above. The search party reached the school, and ninja cadets scrambled to get out of the path of the giant dog. Akamaru led the three humans to one of the classrooms on the bottom floor. Fortunately, the room was empty, giving them the chance to look around. It's not here, Naruto sounded dejected. Akamaru, Kiba's voice emerged from the collar. Were there any other trails, weaker ones? Woof. Okay, then try following the next best track. The nin dog let out a slight whine, and trotted back into the hallway, his nose to the ground. This time Akamaru moved more slowly and carefully, taking a different route out of the school. His path took them towards the outskirts of the village. He seems to be heading towards the target range or the training stones, Sakura remarked. Have you been there? Not since before our mission, he considered, and I know I still had it before we left. As he led them past the final row of houses, Akamaru turned onto the path to the target range. Last set, Konohamaru told his teammates, taking out his last 4 kunai. Moegi also readied kunai, and Udon withdrew shuriken. The genin trio were back to back, and the dummies around the wooded thicket were peppered with throwing knives and stars. On 3, the self-proclaimed leader counted. 1. Each of the young ninjas tensed. 2. They drew back their arms. 3. They released in unison. But an orange shadow crossed the path of Konohamaru's missiles. 2 were deflected into the ground, but the remaining 2 each spun around Naruto's pointer and middle fingers. The 2 blades stood out, because instead of the standard white linen, one of the kunai was wrapped in red, the other in blue. Each weapon also had a tail that matched the grip. Oh, hey boss, Konohamaru greeted Naruto familiarly, however his goofy grin faded quickly as the older genin stalked towards him with an angry glare. Where did you get these, honored grandson? Naruto used Konohamaru's least favorite nickname as a sign of his rage. Remember, Karen's on vacation so her store is closed, and since I was running short on kunai you said I could get some from you and I would pay you back after the emporium reopens. In his discomfort he babbled out an explanation. And so you borrowed the ones that were in a separate, special case? The possessed ninja asked with biting sarcasm. Naruto forced himself to calm down. Don't worry about it, Konohamaru. No harm done in the end. But next time, take the normal stuff, not the ones kept separate. Without waiting for a response, he turned and flash-stepped into the forest. Once he was in clearing half-mile away, Naruto stopped and took out the wooden case. Before he could replace the treasured weapons, a red streak intercepted him, and Sakura landed a few feet away holding the 2 blades. She tossed one to Hinata, before considering the red-wrapped kunai she had retained. This is what you've been panicking over. And almost bit off Konohamaru's head for. A pair of ordinary kunai. Sakura's voice bore confusion and a touch of scorn. Akamaru, stay out of sight, Kiba counseled, still listening. Neji and Tenten landed on a branch above the canine. You're wrong, Sakura, Hinata offered. These blades have been very skillfully maintained, and have had chakra bonded them, if somewhat clumsily. They only started as ordinary. The fiery kunoichi looked as the blade she held more carefully. It was more slender than usually, as if it had been repeatedly sharpened. There was also a chip in one of the edges that had been expertly repaired. That was unusual. Kunai were considered expendable. As many as 1/3 were lost or destroyed in the course of normal use. And those that were recovered were recycled once they went dull or were damaged. This sort of care was generally reserved for valuable weapons like swords or spears. What is that? A character? Hinata noticed something at the edge of the wrapping. She carefully detached the cloth from the grip and unwound it. Then her eyes went wide. My name? She asked, looking up at Naruto in doubt. Sakura's temper flared, and she unwound the blade she held none too gently. Sakura Haruno. She glared at Naruto with disappointment and a touch of fear. Naruto, you made death blades for Hinata and me. Of course not. He was hurt by the implication. Even if I believed in that myth, you have to put the name on the blade right. If that superstition even worked, putting the name on the handle would make sure they could never hit you, right? Both ladies calmed slightly at that, but neither seemed ready to let him off the hook. Fine, I'll explain. He slumped in defeat. I don't know if you two ever thought about it, but growing up I pretty much hated my birthdays. I didn't have friends or family, and hearing everyone else talk about presents and parties only made it worse. Realization filled the faces of Hinata and Sakura, but they did not interrupt. And now that he was opening up, the words continued to pour out of him. Eventually I got used to it, or so I told myself. I made it a point not to tell anyone my birthday, so I could never be disappointed. But last year, I couldn't avoid it. Pervy Sage knew when my birthday was, and he made a point of celebrating. He took me to see the last Princess Gale movie, and even treated me to dinner. He paused and glanced sideways at the blades again, his eyes growing wet. Hinata started to tear up too, and Sakura held her face carefully neutral. When we got back to his home, Jiraiya presented me with 2 small boxes. He said they had arrived by courier that morning. One was from you, Sakura, and the other was from you, Hinata. Each contained a simple note wishing me a happy birthday. And each box contained a single kunai, Sakura interrupted quietly. Exactly. The first birthday presents I ever got. A drop of water ran down his left cheek, but it was more than that. They were the physical proof that I had friends, and even though we were apart, they were still thinking of me. That's why I put your names on them, bought special cloth to wrap the handles, and made a case to keep them in. I only use them as a last resort, and I always recover and repair them. So I will never forget. He opened the hand-carved box and extended it towards them. The inside was lined with orange velvet, with perfect indentations for a pair of kunai. Each girl skillfully rewound the hilt, and walked over to him. Sakura carefully placed her dagger in the hollow on the right, and Hinata gently placed her blade in the mark on the left. Well, there you go. Naruto wiped the tear from his face and forced a smile. Go ahead and laugh at me for being an idiot. But neither of them cracked a smile. Instead, they looked at each other and nodded. And then both girls hugged him at the same time. Sentimental fool, Neji said, turning away. Then Tenten caught him pressing his pointer and thumb into the corners of his eyes. Neji, I must have gotten something in my eye from all this running around. Can we go now? Of course, she did not press him further, and covered a smile. Thank you, both, Naruto said after the 2 Chunin has disengaged, even if you weren't supposed to find out about this. He started walking back to the village, and they fell in next to him. You know, Naruto, Sakura started, infusing chakra into weapons isn't that different than healing. I could probably help you with whatever you're trying to do with those. The Byakugan is highly suited for observing such precise work. Hinata was not to be outdone. We could use the Kurenai jutsu again so you can see the binding better. Seeing won't help if you don't know what you are doing, Sakura countered confrontationally. Human cells and metal weapons are not that much alike. Hinata pretended she was thinking out loud instead of addressing Sakura. The pink-haired young woman was ready to argue, when they were interrupted by Naruto's stomach growling angrily. Man, I'm starving from all that running. Then his expression brightened. Wait, didn't Nishi say something about a new breakfast ramen? I gotta try it. If you two want to come, I'm buying. Naruto took off like a shot. Sakura pretended to be exasperated, and Hinata giggled, and they both followed. Oh man, Naruto paced fretfully, what does Grandma Tsunade want now? He had been summoned to the Hokage's office. At first he had hoped it was some urgent mission, but there did not appear to be anyone else there, so he decided he had been wrong. The genin racked his brain for anything he might have done to get himself in trouble. The door opened, and a well-endowed woman, seemingly in her early 30s, emerged. Her hard brown eyes fell on Naruto, and for a second her expression was one of unfading affection. But before he could see that, she assumed an arrogant smirk. Ah, Naruto, she said with feigned disdain, what are you doing here? Instantly all thoughts of playing it polite vanished. Naruto pointed at her and shouted, are you going senile, old lady? You told me to come here. You ungrateful whelp. She raised a fist. You should be grateful to receive an invitation from a beautiful, important, young woman such as myself. You haven't been young since long before I was born. Do you want to take this outside? She advanced menacingly. They glared at each other for another second, before breaking down into peals of laughter. Come inside, the fifth motioned into her office. Ladies first. Naruto both bowed and winked. In response, she pushed him through the door. So why did you want me to come here? Naruto asked, settling into one of the chairs opposite her desk. Do you have a special mission for me? No, she grinned mischievously. You could almost say the opposite is true. I'm going to be your new sensei, for a little while at least. Really? That's awesome. Naruto almost leapt out of the chair. But then his eyes narrowed. Wait, you're not going to teach me healing jutsu, are you? Tsunade frowned slightly as she thought about that. No, I was not. But now that you mention it, that's not a bad idea. I think all ninjas should know the basics of medical jutsu, in case the team's medical nin is missing or injured. If Sakura got hurt, you'd want to be able to help her, wouldn't you? And with the amount of chakra you possess, even if you don't have any talent for healing, you might be able to save someone through brute force. But that's not why you are here today, she digressed. There are certain aspects of your ninja skills. The Hokage was cut off by a quiet knock on the door. Good, your training partner is here. She turned and walked back to the door. Partner. Naruto sounded dejected. Yes. Your history shows that you advanced fastest when you have someone at your own level to either compete against or help. So I picked another ninja in need of similar assistance to work with you. Come in, Hinata, the female Sannin said as she opened the door. You are just in time to hear me go through a list of Naruto's shortcomings as a ninja. Hey, oh, no, I don't, I can come back later. The daughter of the Hyuga clan took a step back from the door. No, come on. Tsunade caught the girl's shoulder and gently pulled her into the room. This is part of your training. The Hokage sat down at her desk, and both of the young ninjas fidgeted as she placed their files in front of her. After a few moments of review, she addressed them. Hinata, you wish to someday attain the rank of Jonin, is that correct? Yes, Lady Tsunade, the Chunin bowed her head humbly. And, Naruto, everyone knows your dream is to one day be the Hokage. Although it is not technically required, if you cannot become a Jonin, you stand little chance of becoming Hokage. So what? Naruto asked defensively. Well, Tsunade opened his file again. Unlike the rank of Chunin, which can be achieved through natural talent and luck, a Jonin needs strong technical skills. And on paper, you are the weakest ninja in the village. She turned the paper to face them. Naruto's face went blank with surprise, and Hinata blushed in embarrassment. As you can see, all of your weapon and taijutsu skills are ranked at E or D level, except for light throwing blades. To qualify as a Jonin you must have at least 5 C rank skills in each category, and either 2 B rank or 1 A rank. The list of ninjutsu you know is short but not out of range, considering the number of A or S rank techniques you know. But your genjutsu is intolerable. You have no techniques, and have never successfully released genjutsu. And your chakra control is below average. Naruto looked like death warmed over at the frank and negative portrayal of his experience. His would-be romance looked at him with pity. Of course, that is only on paper. You have a natural talent for unarmed combat, and are among the strongest, quickest, and toughest ninja in the village. And with the incredible amount of chakra you possess, your lack of finesse has not been a hindrance. You are more than qualified to be a Chunin, and I believe that you will pass the next exam. But a Jonin requires more than that. Hinata. When the Hokage said her name, the young woman jumped. You have achieved a rank in Gentle Fist Taijutsu, but your other unarmed skills have suffered, almost to the level of Naruto. Your weapon skills are almost adequate, and you are qualified in both ninjutsu and genjutsu. And your chakra control is top-notch. But your chakra reserves are below average for a ninja of your age and experience. This is due in part to your chakra control, and the efficiency of the gentle fist style. You have rarely been forced to stretch the limits of your chakra. The Byakugan's heir nodded blankly at her review. Naruto recovered enough to empathize with her, reaching out to touch her forearm. Grandma Tsunade, that's too cruel. He glared at their leader. No, it is just honest. She shook her head. I believe you both have it in you to achieve the rank of Jonin. So, you will both be working with me on your taijutsu and your chakra. I have devised a training regimen that will allow Naruto to work on his control, and Hinata to push herself, while you both work on unarmed combat. Okay, then, what's the plan? Naruto was guardedly optimistic. First, I am going to teach you both the Ranshinsho. That jutsu you used to screw up Kabuto's movements. The same. You will both be required to maintain the flow of energy for the duration of our training sessions. And since you both have a secondary affinity to lightning, the technique is well suited for you. Wait, my chakra element is wind, Naruto protested. Your primary element is wind, as Hinata's is earth, the legendary ninja lectured, but many shinobi, including the two of you, have a secondary affinity. Not as strong as the primary, but stronger than the other three. We both have lightning for a secondary element. Hinata's voice trembled slightly at the suggestion. Tsunade turned away to hide a kindly smile. Correct. The Ranshinsho requires the use of elemental recomposition to convert your chakra to electricity. This will be where it will help Naruto. And the technique takes more chakra than the gentle fist, so maintaining it for an extended period will push you, Hinata. I also borrowed some of Guy's chakra weights, should just the Ranshinsho become too simple. When do we begin? Hinata asked. I will meet you both at the academy at 1 p.m. I have asked them to set aside one of the rooms with the sparring dummies, she answered. You are free until then. Hinata bowed deeply as she stood, and hurried out of the room. Naruto, the Hokage's gentle voice caught him before he left the room. I'm sorry for embarrassing you like that in front of Hinata. But you needed to know. And you might want to seek out additional tutors for your weapon jutsu and genjutsu. Well, I would be better with weapons, Naruto offered, but the old pervert didn't think they were that important. And there was one in particular I liked, but he just made light of it. Which weapon? She appeared surprised by his answer. That is an unusual choice, she agreed, but there are two people in the village who have mastered it. Who? Uruka Yumino and Anko Mitarashi. Really? Naruto was overjoyed. Uruka-sensei can teach me. Anko is more skilled, Tsunade informed him, already knowing his preference. Well, maybe I'll ask them both, just to be safe. See you in a couple hours. He ran out the door. Naruto left the building at a sprint, not knowing he had an invisible stalker. As soon as he had slammed the door, Tsunade had opened a sealed drawer in her desk, and removed the Hokage's treasure. With no one to teach her, and only vague instructions, it had taken her almost a year to master, but now she could use the crystal eye to perform the clairsentient jutsu. Thus, without their knowledge, the fifth continued to spy on her new students. Wait up, Hinata, Naruto said as he caught up to her. He met her eyes with concern. Are you okay? Grandma Tsunade was too harsh. What? Oh, I'm fine, Naruto. I basically knew everything Lady Tsunade told me. Her intentions were good, it is just a little tough to hear out loud. Then she gave him the same appraisal, but what about you? It must have been even harder for you. Nah, Naruto shrugged, you know I don't worry about that kinda thing. Those stupid papers have nothing to do with the real world. He chuckled, however she had come to know him well enough to hear the hollowness in his voice. She had once called him a proud failure, but she could now see that it was at least partly a facade. Anyway, the Leaf Genin quickly changed the subject. I've got something to show you. Come, air. He gently dragged her into the small meditation park next to the ninja operations building. The watching Sanin's eyes narrowed in suspicion. What was he doing? Ready. Naruto released her. He raised his right hand, cupping and spreading his fingers. 1. He proclaimed. A tiny Rasengan, only a half-inch in diameter, formed over his pointer. Tsunade carefully controlled her amazement, despite being alone. Wrapping the chakra strands into such a tiny sphere should have been almost impossible for Naruto. But why did he start count? She started to ponder, only to be interrupted. 2. The fox-faced boy created a second, identical Rasengan over his middle finger. The Hokage's eyes widened against her will to hide. She signaled rat, ox, dog, and serpent, and said, chakra mask. The genjutsu she cast over herself allowed her to see chakra, though not so precisely or efficiently as the Byakugan. As she suspected, both of the miniature spiraling spheres were perfect. It had taken Jiraiya years to be able to form two Rasengan at the same time. She was starting to doubt. 3. Naruto conjured a third orb over his right ring finger, and Tsunade's jaw dropped. What are Jiraiya and Kakashi playing at? She thought angrily after she regained control. Even if it was only for this one technique, forming and maintaining 3 Rasengan was a feat of incredible chakra control. Had those two really undervalued Naruto's abilities to that degree? Or, she suddenly wondered, has he advanced this much in the 5 weeks he has been training with Hinata? 4. Naruto struggled to get the word out. Still more chakra began to twist and flow over his pinky finger, but the energy destabilized, and exploded, taking the third swirling sphere with it. I still can't get the fourth one. He sounded somewhat dejected, dismissing the first two as well. Tsunade sank back into her seat with a sigh of relief. No, that's excellent, Naruto, the pale young woman cheered him, and I have something to show you too. She took out a child's toy, a hand-sized rubber ball. The female Sanin's attention was again ensnared. The heir to the Byakugan held the ball lightly in both of her hands, almost as if to pray to it. After a second, the surface of the plaything began to rapidly distort, as though a tiny shinobi was attempting to punch her way out. After another moment, the sphere exploded, sending rubber shrapnel throughout the clearing. Hinata, that's great, you mastered the second phase. Naruto hugged her impulsively, and the girl's face started to glow red. Tomorrow, we can start on the last step. He let her go, and plucked a bit of latex out of her hair. Yes, she nodded back, smiling. The fifth pushed her chair back from the desk, breaking the jutsu. He's teaching her the Rasengan. She leaned back in her chair, suddenly feeling every one of her 40 years. Her mouth twitched upwards at the personal deception. These kids are too much, she thought. With a pained groan, Naruto dropped onto one of the stools at Ichiraku Ramen. Hinata was more delicate, but just as tired as she too sat. Hey, old man, give me an extra large miso ramen with extra pork, the teen waved at Chuki as he shouted his order. Coming right up. Naruto, the cook nodded. What can I get for you, Miss Hinata? Oh, just a small diet seafood bowl, please. As they waited, he grabbed his shoulder and started to massage his sore muscles. Man, Grandma Tsunade sure is a slave driver, he grunted. I wonder how Sakura puts up with her. She's not so bad, Hinata countered. She's just trying to make sure we learn the techniques, and are strong enough to survive. Naruto made an annoyed face, and opened his mouth to argue. But then he noticed the look of pain she was trying to hide. She was also holding her left arm strangely. He realized both the physical exertion and the draining of her chakra made the training much harder for the kunoichi. He stood up and stepped so he was behind her left side. She almost jumped when he reached up and began gently kneading the muscles in her shoulder. Though she turned bright red, the hurting also eased from her eyes and her posture grew more relaxed. The genin knew he was being too familiar, especially given the circumstances, but he was more concerned with helping her. You know, Hinata, he said softly, if she is pushing too hard, you should let Tsunade know. She wouldn't want you to get hurt. Or if you can't tell her, you can talk to me. Hinata's eyes grew misty, but she was spared having to respond as two bowls were plopped down in front of them. Is your arm better? Naruto asked, continued to rub even though his mind had obviously shifted focus to the food. Yes, much. Thank you. Please, go ahead and eat. She lightly pulled away as she broke her chopsticks apart. Naruto sat back down and after mumbling a traditional thanks, dug in. For the next few minutes they sat in silence, simply enjoying the food in each other's presence. Then the blonde teen spoke again. Hinata, I'm going to ask you a question. But it's kinda personal, so feel free to not answer, or even slap me again until I'm totally out of line. The girl pushed away her now empty bowl, obviously apprehensive. But she nodded and said, all right, what is it? Well, it's just that everyone knows about your dad. But I was wondering if you could tell me about your mom. My mother. Hinata repeated as if unsure what she heard. Yeah, what was she like? Was she a ninja? My mother. She paused, considering what to say. No, she was not a ninja. She was a baker. In fact, the clan elders tried to prevent my father from marrying her. They said because she was not a ninja, she would weaken the bloodline. She flinched at that, showing the heartache of having been called the fulfillment of that prophecy. Uncle Hazashi told Neji that my father refused to accept the decision, and went so far as to threaten to abandon the Hyuga clan and reveal our secrets if they did not let him marry. He loved her more than anything else. Where is she now? He pressed slightly as she trailed off. Is she? Yes. Neji told you that I was almost taken by a cloud ninja, and that my father killed the kidnapper. What he did not know, is that when the spy came to take me, my mother was present. She tried to fight him off, and he stabbed her. That was the real reason my father slaughtered that shinobi. Not because I was being kidnapped, but because the man had killed father's true love. Hinata wiped a drop around her left eye and continued. That was when our relationship fell apart. Things had always been strained because I was so timid and clumsy. But afterwards, he seemed to blame me for my mother's death. At one point he told me if I had been brave enough to cry out, he might have arrived in time to save us both. That jerk. Naruto slammed his fist on the counter. How dare he say that to you, his own daughter? She shook her head vehemently. He apologized for that, and other things. He finally realized he had been wrongly directing all of his anger and regret towards me. And he figured that out because of you and Neji. Naruto settled down, and cautiously asked, do you remember her? Yes, she said again, Sometimes it's hard to remember specific events, but I can still see her smile, smell her scent of fresh bread and cake, and hear her laugh. She was very beautiful, and kind. Just like her daughter, Naruto mused matter-of-factly. Hinata blinked widely, then smiled and blushed slightly at the compliment. What about you? The Hyuga's heir turned the conversation back on her training partner. I know you are an orphan, but do you know anything about your parents? I've looked some stuff up in the archives. The boisterous genin turned introspective. My mother was Yukihana Uzumaki, a leaf genin. He frowned and rubbed his face at that. In fact, it's kinda strange. Her skill report was the opposite of mine. B rank or better for everything, and a list of ninjutsu and genjutsu as long as your arm. I checked through all the records, and the only ninja I could find with better overall rankings were the 3rd and 4th Hokages, and the 3 Sannin. She should have been a Jonin, or at least a Chunin. She died the night the Kyuubi attacked the village. Then he grew depressed. My birth certificate doesn't list my father's name. It makes me imagine all sorts of strange things. Was he someone married and powerful, who forced his poor ninja mistress not to give up his name? Or did she just have so many boyfriends she didn't know who my father was? She looked sad for him, and touched his hand gently. I'm sure it was nothing like that. He tried to downplay it, but when you don't know something, it can be hard not to imagine the worst, right? He stood up suddenly. I've got a scouting mission tomorrow, so I better turn in early. But we should be back in 3 days, so I'll see you then, okay, Hinata. What? She was roused from her trance by his statement, right? Good luck, Naruto. The young man dropped enough money to cover the tab, and then hurried off, carefully hiding his face. The next morning the gentle woman was still troubled. Her family life was far from ideal, but she had never known Naruto's history was such a blank. By the time she had finished eating breakfast, she resolved to do something about it. He already looked in the archives, she remembered aloud, drawing a curious glance from her younger sister. So where else could I get information? I know. Hanabi continued to view Hinata as an oddity even as the elder sister ran from the room. Lady Tsunade. Hinata burst into the Hokage's office a few short minutes later. 2 other leaf ninja trailed closely behind her, panting. Lord Hokage, we tried to stop her, the taller of the pair started, but she raised her hand to silence them. Rado, Genma, you can go. I will see Hinata. Tsunade informed her guards. What can I do for you? The medical Sannin asked her student. I wanted to ask you if you knew anything about Yukihana Uzumaki, the Chunin Kunoichi stated. Naruto's mother. Tsunade asked sharply, fixing the girl with a harsh stare. Yes. Hinata grew uncomfortable under her superior's gaze. Naruto and I were talking yesterday night, about our families, anxious, she began to explain quickly, and he told me his father isn't listed on his birth certificate, and he worried his mother might have had an improper relationship or even been wanton. The last word was difficult for Hinata to say, but apparently harder for Tsunade to hear. The Hokage's eyes burned with both anger and sadness. The timid ninja let out a squeak when she saw the expression, and took half a step back. And I was hoping you could tell me something so I could put his mind at ease, the pale beauty forced out without pause. Tsunade took a deep breath to regain control. I know who Naruto's father was, she answered the request carefully. Not many people did, but Yukihana Uzumaki was someone I considered a friend, despite our age difference. Yukihana had her reasons for keeping it a secret, and those of us who know have chosen to honor her wishes until it is either the time is right, or it becomes necessary to tell Naruto. But why? Hinata interjected. If I tell you that, you might be able to figure out this secret. And I don't trust you not to tell him, she smirked as the girl looked down and wrung her hands. Then the Hokage's face softened in fond memory, but you can tell the knucklehead this. Yukihana Uzumaki was a loyal, virtuous woman, and a truly outstanding shinobi. She only ever had eyes for one man, and she loved him with all her heart and soul. And it was her great fortune that he returned her feelings. But she was also odd about change. He proposed to her at least once before I left the village, but she refused. And even though they spent every night together, she refused to move in with him. And in a village of gossiping ninja, they did a remarkable job of keeping their privacy. Hinata smiled happily at the information. But if you really want a story to pass on about Yukihana, there is someone else you need to talk to. Later that evening, Hinata entered the tavern with great uncertainty. Every eye turned to look at her, and the dull roar died instantly. It was not every day an underage princess walked into the bar, and suddenly all but the most drunk or brazen of the Konoha citizens were uncomfortable. Spotting her target, Hinata began to make her way across the crowded room. It was easier than she expected, as most of the patrons were quite anxious to move out of her path. Mr. Akamichi, Mr. Nara, Mr. Yamanaka, she stated both in greeting and to get their attention. Hello, Hinata. Inoichi Yamanaka seemed the least put off by this unusual interruption, and smiled openly at the young woman. Is there something we can do for you? Yes, she was put at ease by his sincerity. Lady Tsunade said you could tell me about Yukihana Uzumaki. Shikaku Nara choked at that, spitting sake all over the bar. Choza Akamichi grabbed a half-dozen skewers from the plate in front of him, and began to rapidly suck the dango from them. Ino's father's face clouded over, and he turned away from the girl. Another bottle. The blonde Jonin flagged down the barman. On second thought, better make it two. I'm sorry. She was confused by their reactions. Did I say something wrong? That woman, Shikamaru's father croaked, we owe her a debt we can never repay. A debt we have only expanded. Choji's father paused his gorging to say angrily. Here we go again, Shikaku groaned. Yukihana saved our lives. The lazy remark sparked the large Jonin's ire, and we've treated her son as badly as anyone else in this village. I wouldn't say, Inoichi started, but Choza interrupted him. Did we ever tell anyone to lay off the kid? Did we tell our own children to be nice to him? Then his near shout dropped to a whisper. Did we ever tell Naruto what a great person, a great ninja, his mother was? Reopening old wounds didn't sit well with Hinata, but she thought up a way to be of assistance. You could tell me about her, she offered, and I can pass it on to Naruto. I'm sure both mother and son would appreciate that. The trio exchanged glances, and then lead Hinata over to a booth for more privacy. We had just become Chunin, Shikaku started, and we were so full of ourselves. Until the night disaster came to the village. Damn it, it's still coming this way, Choza whispered harshly. Shika, can't you pin it down? No, the deer herder shook his head. Its Charka is disrupting my shadow jutsu. It's such a hassle. I know what you mean, Inoichi added. I tried to mind transfer into it. It was like running face first into a brick wall, painted with all my worst nightmares. What about you, Cho? The big ninja grimaced. I'm too hungry to do anything. What about you two? Yamanaka looked at the two Jonin they had encountered. The slight Kunoichi shook her head. I hit that demon a dozen times. Ryu indicated the giant club she carried, a device half again her height and close to 3 times her weight, and it didn't even notice. Now I barely have enough chakra to carry this. I hit it with my best fire jutsu, Ken offered when his wife trailed off, and I think it laughed at me. Shish, Akamichi hissed. A loud crunch echoed as the giant beast landed lightly, only 20 feet from them. They heard a scream of human pain, which went silent in a sickening chomp. The 5 shinobi backed away as quietly as they could, as the Kyuubi sniffed the air. As it turned to face them, they could both feel and smell its fetid breath. With a vicious chuckle, the demon started stalking towards them. Crap, run, Choza shouted, but before the quintet could escape, the fox's tails flashed and barricade of torn-up trees landed behind them, blocking their path. With its prey trapped, the Kyuubi lunged forward. Both Inoichi and Shikaku desperately hurtled kunai into the exposed soft tissues of the monster's mouth, but the demon did not flinch or pause. Fuden. Cyclone Spike's jutsu. A high, clear voice proclaimed above them. A shadow appeared over the Kyuubi, and gestured as if to throw blades. But instead the shinobi released 11 green charka cones, which dug into the demon's neck. The creature's head snapped up with a growl of annoyance, mere inches from swallowing Choza and Ryu. The kunoichi with pale blue hair landed in a tree, facing the monster. She looked down at her comrades and shouted, "Run!" "Isn't that?" Shika asked. "Yes," Cho confirmed. "Didn't she just?" The lazy genius continued. "Yes. Doden. Stone Claws Jutsu," Yukihana Uzumaki shouted, completing a set of hand seals. 5 talons of rock and dirt erupted from the earth. 2 each secured the demon's forelimbs, and the remaining grabbed its right rear leg. The vulpine struggled to reach her, and when it could not, began tearing into the manifested claws with its teeth. "What are you waiting for?" She yelled at them once more, even as her hands started moving again. "Get out of there." "Lady doesn't have to tell me 3 times, Ken said, climbing the wooden wall. The other ninja followed suit, but the Ino-Shika Cho trio stopped at the top to watch the genin's next move. Kaden. Abyss Flare Jutsu. She grabbed her right wrist with her left hand to brace, even as a column of purple flames blasted into the demon. This time when the Kyuubi roared, it was a bellow of pure pain. In its rage it finally managed to rip free, and its left claw flew up and struck the young woman. She tumbled into the sky from the impact, and the men did not see what happened to her. "Let's go," Ryu shouted back to them, and the Chunin dove off the rampart away from their opponent. After running for a few minutes, the shinobi slowed when they realized the creature was not following them. "What happened?" Ken asked anxiously. "Not sure," Nara said. "It looked like the Kyuubi hit her. I didn't see a substitution. She shouldn't have been out here," Inoichi said angrily. "She only gave birth 2 days ago. It's a good thing for you I'm a fast healer." The other 5 leaf warriors jumped when Yukihana Uzumaki appeared in their midst. "Yuki, are you okay?" Inoichi looked at her carefully. "I'm fine. It barely scratched me." "What are you doing here?" Choza demanded, worried. "Besides saving you." Her green eyes sparkled mischievously, and she put her hands behind her head. When none of them smiled, she sobered. "Listen, this thing destroyed the entire Hidden Lake village a couple weeks again," she lectured them. "Despite being both the youngest and the lowest rank, we need every ninja we can get." Ken nodded, and asked, "Now what?" "The 4th has a plan," she told them, taking out 2 weapon scrolls. She handed one to Ken and the other to Shikaku. "The Hokage needs time, so he can finish the jutsu. When he gives the signal, we have to hit the demon with as many of these kunai as we can. Until then, we have to distract the Kyuubi. Keep it away from the village, and the 4th. But don't be a hero, and don't try to hurt it. Get its attention and stay alive. I need you 5 to spread out. Distribute the orders and the weapons to everyone you can find." Her task complete, the skilled kunoichi disappeared. A few seconds later, the 9-tailed fox howled in pain again. "You heard her." Ryu made them focus. "Ken and I will go north, you 3 go south." 20 minutes later, the flare went up, and Ino-Shika Cho converged on the demon. Dozens of leaf ninja charged the Kyuubi from all sides, peppering the calamity-made flesh with scroll-bound blades. But nothing happened. "It's not working," Ino shouted. "Maybe we didn't have enough kunai," Shika speculated. "Look," Cho pointed. Yukihana Uzumaki had appeared in the air above the fox. Her green eyes glowed brightly under the effect of some sort of genjutsu. There, despite the distance, her voice carried to them. She drew back her arm, and drilled a kunai into the fox's skull next to its right ear. Instantly, her kunai and 7 others began to glow vividly against the night. A seal expanded around the demon, and after it had engulfed the creature, the Kyuubi vanished. "Good," Yukihana exhaled, then her eyes lost their glow and she started to fall. "I'm sorry, Naruto." "Yukihana," the trio shouted in unison. They moved quickly, and Choza caught the kunoichi before she hit the ground. They all saw the blood leaking from the front of her snow-white shozoku. Quick! We have to get her to a medic, Shika directed his comrades. The doctors told us those scratches tore a third of the way through her body, and damaged her liver and right lung. Inoichi concluded, if she had sought healing right away, she almost certainly would have lived. Instead she held her insides together with her own chakra so she could keep fighting. Hinata nodded, trembling slightly, but not crying. Then they all realized the entire bar was silent, that everyone was listening to them recount the tale. The teen Kunoichi stood slowly, and then bowed deeply to them. Thank you for telling me, she told them. Naruto's mother was truly a remarkable woman. I will make sure he knows that. Bowing again quickly, she walked out of the tavern. As she exited, the normal noise resumed. That was hard, Inoichi said. Yeah, but I feel better, Shikaku acknowledged. Hey, good morning, Hinata. Naruto was in good spirits as the young woman ran up to him. Then he looked confused at her palpable excitement. What's up? He asked. I have something to tell you, Hinata said, and then she began to relay what she had learned. As always, Hinata was waiting for him at the training stones. This was their first solo meeting in 3 weeks, between their respective missions, and training with Tsunade. But this time Naruto did not bound into the clearing. Instead he approached slowly and nervously. His unusual demeanor set her on edge. Hello, Naruto, she greeted him first, also counter to their pattern. Hello, Hinata, his voice was oddly shy, and formal. She began tapping her fingers anxiously. He fidgeted for a second, and then extended a small, poorly wrapped box to her. What is this? She asked, taking it gingerly. This is to say thank you, his voice trembled, for giving me my mother. Her breath caught in her throat, and she could not say anything. Unable to meet his gaze, she instead focused on the present. She gently plied at the tape, and carefully removed the crumpled paper. Rather than throwing it away, she carefully folded it and slipped it into one of her pockets. Then she drew the lid off the box. Inside was a silver chain bracelet. The tablet had the spiral leaf etched into it, and the symbol was filled with what appeared to be emerald dust. The girl's eyes grew huge, and tears spilled out. She looked up at Naruto and shook her head. No. Naruto, I can't accept this. It is too much. She tried to give the box back to him. But he shook his head. How much is family worth? He asked quietly, placing his hands behind his back. She pushed the bracelet towards him again, and his eyes hardened. If you have to, think of it as 15 years of missed birthday and Yuletide gifts. She did not budge, and he got angry. Look, I can't take it back, and it won't fit me. She jumped at his shout, and he sheepishly calmed down. So please, take it. Seeing how much it meant to him, she nodded. She took the ornament out of the box, and noticed the inscription on the back. Strength comes in many forms, she read aloud. Her eyes glistened again as she looked up at him. She extended the bracelet in her right hand and offered him her left wrist. Will you? She asked. He took the bangle from her, and opened the clasp. He wrapped it around her forearm, and closed the catch. With a pleasant jingle, the gift fell into place. Thank you, she said sincerely. With her acceptance, the genin's normal humor returned. Oh, there's something else, he said enthusiastically. She returned her eyes to him in surprise. I mastered your jutsu, he proclaimed. My jutsu. She was confused by the assertion. Well, you came up with the idea, he told her. Then he raised his hand, separating his upturned fingers. This time he didn't count, but instead formed 5 tiny Rasengan in quick succession. One perfect sphere, the size of a grape, hovered over each digit. The way I suggested you practice chakra control. That's not a jutsu. Naruto grinned broadly, and expanded each of the spheres to just over an inch in diameter. Then he turned to Boulder next to him. You might want to stand back, he warned. After she had moved back a few paces, he drew his arm back, and jabbed the standing stone. The spiraling spheres drilled rapidly into the hard mineral. As the tips of his fingers passed the surface of the stone, the entire rock began to vibrate. Hinata blinked as the entire structure began to quake violently. Suddenly, the stone exploded. When the cloud of dust cleared, there was a hole straight through the granite as big as Naruto's palm, and trails radiating out from his fingers. I see. She jogged back over to examine the scarred rock. She probed the damaged boulder. Because the Rasengan are all slightly different frequencies, the dissonance causes a vibration when they hit. The target tears itself apart. And when that happens, the spheres are pushed away, creating these tracks. Naruto looked totally lost, but nevertheless said, "Yeah, I thought it was something like that." Then he grinned at her again, "And you designed the technique, so you have the right to name it." Name it? Yeah, it needs a name, right? A name. She traced the cuts in the boulder again, like a 5-pointed star. She mused. How about the 5 points Rasengan? She asked, unsure of her choice. 5 points Rasengan, that's great. The 5 points Rasengan it is. Then he took out another bag. He opened it, and spilled a handful of balloons onto the ground. Hinata all but floated back into the Hyuga manor, glowing with happiness. She had had a perfect afternoon, capping it off by keeping a balloon from popping for almost 30 seconds. When she met her father at an intersection of the halls, he was forced to smile by her obvious joy. Good evening, Hinata, Hiyashi greeted his daughter. Hello, father, she bowed slightly, sending off a slight clinking. The Hyuga leader's enhanced eyes immediately found the source of the noise, an unfamiliar decoration affixed to the girl's wrist. That is a very nice bracelet, he commented carefully. Where did you get it? It was a gift from a friend, she smiled fondly at the bracelet. It looks expensive. You and this person must be very close. His tone betrayed mistrust, but his doubts did not touch her. I hope so, she sighed pleasantly. Good night. She bowed again and skipped away. As his daughter left, Hiyashi Hyuga's face grew shadowed in anger. He turned back the way he came and stalked off. I demand you keep him away from my daughter. Hiyashi Hyuga slammed his palm on the desk for effect. You demand. The Hokage had been staring down at her paperwork, but now she lifted her head to look at the clan leader. On the surface she appeared amused, but the twist of her lips and a tightness around her eyes dared him to push again. Realizing he had gone too far, Hiyashi took a deep breath to steady himself. Even if I were inclined to honor your request, she hurtled the last word like a shuriken. The first Hokage set up the laws so that the people of the Konohagakure can be friends with who they want, date who they want, and marry whomever they wish. Her smirk broadened as she added, a fact I'd think you be painfully aware of. She raised her hands in mock defeat. So what can I do? Send Naruto on as many missions as you can, as far from the village as you can find. The only tasks we have that fit that profile involve espionage, and are unsuitable for that knucklehead. Besides that, I think Naruto and Hinata are good for one another, in whatever way they choose. So put simply, no, I will not help you. She answered with great finality. Hiyashi spun imperiously and strode out. I should have known there was only one way to stop this. He offered that parting shot as he left. That was ominous, the Hokage thought. I had better check on Hinata. Hinata, a voice called her name as she walked out of the bookstore. The young woman looked up to see her elder advancing towards her. Lady Tsunade, the teenager bowed. I thought our lesson was later. It is. The Sannin was relieved she arrived first. After a moment of internal debate, the elder shinobi decided to be forthright. Hinata, your father just came to see me. He asked me to stop you and Naruto from spending time together. I think he is going to try and force you to discontinue your training with the knucklehead. I know, she looked down sadly. He told me yesterday he thought the time I am spending with Naruto is wasted. But I know he just wants me to stay away from Naruto. When I told him he was wrong, that Naruto was helping me grow stronger, he grew angry. He tried to hide it, but I saw. That must be why he spoke to you. But if he already spoke to you, then what is his one way to stop this? Tsunade asked herself more than her student. Each woman met the other's eyes at the same time. Naruto. Welcome, Naruto. Hiashi forced a smile as Uzumaki entered the Hyuga clan's dojo. That will be all, Hanabi. He dismissed his daughter, who had brought the guest to him. Thank you for coming. He nodded in mock gratitude. I need to speak to you about Hinata. Naruto remained silent. That was the only reason he could have thought the Hyuga clan leader would want to speak with him. I hate to say this, Hiashi affected remorse, but I don't think her time with you is benefiting my daughter. She needs to spend more time with her teammates, developing her teamwork. And I'm afraid she is too focused on you to be gaining much from your time together. You may just be taking advantage of her. Respectfully, Lord Hyuga, Naruto forced down his pride, and said calmly, I disagree. When we started training with the Hokage, she told us that Hinata's chakra reserves and stamina were both much higher than the last rating Kurenai gave her. She thinks it's because of our training. And I'm not the best teacher, but I've managed to pass on a few of the skills Jiraiya taught me. I didn't want to ask this. Switching tracks, the Lord pretended to be regretful, but don't you think you are taking advantage of Hinata, at least a little bit? We both know how she thinks she feels about you. You could be leading her on, without intending to. The young genin's anger flared, but he did not let it show. Hinata was the one who initiated our training. His tone bordered on a lecture. I have told her I don't know where this is going. It might just be friendship. We both agreed to respect the other's feeling and decisions. If anything, I hope that spending more time with me would give her a more realistic view of me. Naruto took a step back, and half turned away, saying, I have an appointment, I should be going. We're not done, boy, Hiashi growled, the veil of civility dropped. He activated his Byakugan and cut off Naruto's escape. The ninja teen stopped moving to avoid colliding with his host, and the Hyuga leader's glowing fingers began dancing. 8 trigrams 64 palms, he proclaimed. His chakra network partially sealed, Naruto's shoulders dropped as he struggled to stay on his feet. He looked at his friend's father with surprise and anger. Don't glare at me, Hiashi snapped. I won't have my daughter involved with a worthless, no account, thieving shinobi like you. Thieving. Naruto seemed most insulted by the last accusation. I know you stole that bracelet. Right. I had it specially engraved and then stole it to give to someone I care about. Because that doesn't make an already unique item any easier to identify, though in the weaker position, Naruto's voice dripped with sarcasm. There's no way you could afford that on a genin's salary. Hiashi sounded less sure of himself. Not that it's your business, the demon-bonded warrior explained, but as an orphan I get my mother's pension until I turn 16, and I've saved a lot of my money. And either way, I bought it with my royalties. Seeing his opponent, host's confusion, he added, from helping I mean Master Jiraiya with his books. Abandoning that attack, the Byakugan wielder tried a different assault. Everyone in this village knows what you really are. Most distrust and despise you, he said in a dark, insidious tone, and they will never accept you. Do you want to drag Hinata down like that? To make her experience that rejection? No, she's had enough rejection. The teen sounded regretful, and the girl's father flinched, but since the Chunin exam and Orochimaru's assault 3 years ago, it seems like most of the people of the Konoha now accept me for who I am. You have lost control before. In desperation, Hiyashi's voice grew harsh. You can't say you won't lose it again. Next time, you could hurt Hinata. Only one of us has a history of hurting Hinata. Naruto finally gave in to his legendary temper, and it ain't me. How dare you? Excuse me. I'm not the one who told a 7-year-old girl she was responsible for her mother's death because she couldn't stop a Jonin-level ninja. And then, after she worked so hard to gain your acceptance, you turned your back on her on the day she became a genin. He scowled, and now you're doing it again. You said, how she thinks she feels, like her emotions are fake or unimportant. The angry father paused and looked away from his target. Naruto brought his hands together. He no longer faked being weakened by the effects of the Hyuga's secret technique. Chakra pulse, he stated. The blue energy visibly expanded throughout his body, and the Byakugan user was surprised that Naruto's normal chakra flow was restored. Hinata and I devised a counter to the gentle fist ability to stop chakra over a month ago. The 8 trigram 64 palms doesn't work on us anymore, he told the nobleman, and for the record, Hinata is better at this technique than I am. The jab roused Hiashi, who flashed across the room as Naruto was opening the door. He stepped past the genin into the hall. He landed facing the boy, his eyes blazing. Rotation, he exclaimed, streaming chakra out in all directions. An explosion shook the walls around them, but it was the Hyuga Lord who was thrown off his feet. He quickly lifted his face, to see Naruto standing before him, the Rasengan roiling in the teen's right hand. Do it, he ordered, show me your true colors. Attack me. This. Naruto frowned in confusion. He raised the Rasengan up to the level of his heart. This isn't for you. I just needed to disrupt your heavenly spin. Naruto released the jutsu, as he nodded to indicate something just behind to the fallen adult. So you wouldn't hit Hanabi, he explained. Hiashi Hyuga goggled at his daughter, standing not 2 feet from him. She was not in his blind spot, but he had been so focused on Naruto he missed the girl entirely. He turned back to Naruto, who was looking at him with pity. Lord Hiashi, I don't want to be your enemy. Hinata is important to both of us, and so long as she is part of our lives, we're gonna run into each other. And if not for ourselves, we should make peace for her. Naruto extended his physical hand to match his metaphorical one. The nobleman considered it for a moment, and then slapped it aside. He stood on his own, and glanced at his daughter. Hanabi, show Naruto out, he said coldly, before returning to the dojo. The 2 genin walked back to the entrance in silence, but when Naruto stepped outside, the second daughter of the Byakugan spoke. You should have hit him. What? The blonde youth almost gave himself whiplash, he spun so fast. You should have hit him, she repeated, he said some cruel things, and attacked you twice. You should have fought back. But if I had fought back, he just would have taken it as justification of his opinions, the older genin explained, I couldn't do that, for Hinata's sake. Well, later Hanabi. Naruto waved as he walked away. After the girl had closed the door and he was a good distance from the mansion, the shinobi stopped and asked, how much of that did you 2 hear? An instant later, Hinata and Tsunade stood behind him. The younger woman's face was a mask, but the Hokage just smirked. Enough to say I agree with the squirt, the leader of the Leaf Village offered, you should have slugged him. Naruto grinned back, but then caught a glimpse of his friend's expression. He expected Hinata to be looking down, and tapping her fingers. Instead, the kunoichi would have been staring straight ahead, had her eyes been open. And her hands were clenched into fists, trembling at her sides. Lady Tsunade, the girl said suddenly. Her eyes flew open and her gaze was fierce. Are there any open rooms in the ninja barracks? She asked in clipped tones, I do not want to go back there. Hinata. Tsunade's mirth vanished as she realized how hurt the Chunin was. Hinata. Naruto put his hand on her shoulder and started to say something to her. But she stopped him with her anger and shook her head, no. What he did back there is beyond forgiveness. Talking to you like that is bad enough, but to actually attack you. I've never been so ashamed before. I can't see him, can't be in his house. Hinata. He began again, and she pulled away. Hinata. This time Naruto's voice was stern, and her resolve faltered. She met his eyes. People have said and done much worse things to me for less important reasons. And he has a very great reason. He's your dad, and he always will be. He finally wants to protect you, especially since you longer seem to need it. Family is too precious, I can't let you throw it away. Technically, the Sanin teacher cleared her throat, you won't be an adult before your 16th birthday. And despite some painful words, he never legally disowned you. So for now, I can't let you stay in the barracks. If nothing else, Naruto offered another out, go back for Hanabi. You two have just gotten close. If you leave now. He trailed off, letting her imagination fill in the blank. Finally she nodded. That's settled, the Hokage took charge, now it seems like you two could use some hard exercise to clear your minds. She grinned viciously and Naruto groaned. Come in, Hiashi Hyuga responded to a knock on his study door later that night. When he saw who it was, he grew uncomfortable. Hello, Hinata. His daughter had pointedly ignored him all afternoon, not even saying one word during dinner. What can I do for you? He tried to sound like nothing was out of the ordinary. Lord Hiashi, she addressed him formally, and his facade slipped, your actions today were shameful. To go to the Hokage with a personal matter, and attack a fellow ninja, you are fortunate Naruto is not holding you accountable for the assault. Inside, he collapsed. She knew everything, and he could not refute it. Please do not disgrace our family in this manner again. When he did not respond, she turned to leave. Halfway out the door, she looked back at him. Do not make me choose between you and Naruto, she advised, even more coldly, you will not like the results. She closed the door hard, and took a deep breath. Naruto wants me to stand up for myself, she thought, but that also means I have to defy him sometimes, doesn't it?